And this morning we then also moved to a story that's been making waves this morning around the Gauteng Premier saying to us that in fact, we have a lot of buildings and assets, talking about ownership, in the province that is unused at the moment and that needs to be rectified. On the line now, the spokesperson for the Premier of Gauteng, Vuyo Mhaga, to just explain to us what is the way forward here. Vuyo, thank you so much for joining us on Power Breakfast. 34 million rand a month being spent on workspace for government officials in the province. How is this asset register and this asset non-maintenance affecting us?
No, it is affecting us. Good morning to you as well as your listeners. It is affecting us in a very terrible way. And I think it's safe to say, or maybe just the context of it, we are really obviously part of the broader aspect of continuously cutting of budgets and all that. And the maintenance budget obviously has not escaped those budget cuttings. And it has really made it quite difficult to maintain these assets that belong to the Gauteng government. And logically and obviously the workers will want to really operate in a workspace that is of a particular standard. And if failure to do that, then the government must make some temporary provision. And that's why we find ourselves where we are, where we then have to leave some of assets or buildings so that we can continue to provide services.
Will you give us the numbers here, right? So like I said, the report says that about 34 million is being spent a month on housing office staff in other buildings while our buildings stand empty. When you say there have been budget cuts that make the renovations and the infrastructure uptake impossible, what are those cuts vis-a-vis what we're spending on a monthly basis? I mean, if we just average it out across the year, that's a lot of money. Are the cuts really, really bigger than what we're having to spend here as a result?
They are, because if you have to then say let's revamp all the buildings, to sort them out and all the buildings, it will actually it will go to a couple of billions, which we don't have it now. If you to say Gauteng government go and revamp all the buildings as of tomorrow, there's just simply no that amount of money that is available for the Gauteng government basically to deal with that. But also you need to have an appreciation. Some of these buildings in the city center, there was a conscious decision that was made that as private sector is moving from Joburg city center to Sandton and Rosebank, the government must remain there so that you don't create a ghost town. Some of these buildings are quite old, so there is a particular issue of heritage rules that you cannot just maintain the heritage buildings anyhow or demolish them. You need to have a particular setup. So that's where lies the challenge, where you then have, if you then say let's revamp all these buildings to a standard that can be occupied by the workers, it will cost you a lot of money. Vis-a-vis if you then have to deal with that, but that becomes a temporary measure. Gauteng government has been toying around a project called Kupano to really have what we call the Gauteng government precinct in the city center as part of the CBD revitalization. And the conversation that now I think government generally across the country is starting to toy around is around the public-private investment to say, come in, crock in your funds, will be able to pay you over a period of time and make sure that these buildings are revamped. We believe that's a better viable option to say, come in, then we'll be able to pay over a period of time than for us as a provincial government to say, we will be able to revamp all these buildings. There's just simply that is not possible. I don't want to even to mislead Gauteng residents around that. So in the meantime, therefore, you go through the lease agreement, which is normally about 3 years, as and when you basically finalize that partner work. That's where we find ourselves, Hostess.
I mean, this elephant is going to have to be eaten at some point, one piece at a time. You're talking here about possible public partnerships, etc. But is there a time-bound plan here? Is there we will do this in this phase? Is there some kind of plan on the table that can give Gauteng residents peace and that we're not going to continue? Because the longer these buildings stay derelict, the more money we're going to pay to fix them, surely.
No, definitely. I actually part of the meeting between the Premier and MEC. which we just said the Premier needed to get a comprehensive brief, was that come back and draft that where we are in terms of the Kopano percent, because we are trying to say we're going to go use the public partnership. That will be tabled to the to EXCO, so that EXCO can then agree that we need to get some guys that can then start to assist us to crowd in the private investment as well as ourselves to make sure that that building is there. So those plans are basically in place, and I think in the next executive council we'll then be able to, the MEC Mamabolo will then table that plan.
Will this private investment then include having private ownership, or the private sector take some ownership of these buildings? Will it not then get us into a cycle of rental? What kind of investment are we talking about here, and what would the reward for that investment be?
No. So what we normally will basically do, we then say this is our building. We want to basically occupy it, revamp it. We'll then pay you over a period of time, and then over that period of time, then we'll be able to take ownership of it. Almost, if I might actually before, like a Gauteng. The Gauteng was the money that was used by the private sector. And then we pay that amount only next year. That the Gauteng residents will have an asset of 42 billion in their hand, which 100% belongs to them. So that route is a route now that government generally seems to have an appetite of it because of the financial constraints that we find ourselves in. It's unlike when we had a very fiscal healthy situation in the early 2000s. There seems to be a change of attitude to our government, which must be actually welcome, to basically bring everyone on board and then agree that we can pay you over a period of time, and then we get the assets.
So there'll be a payment plan in place. Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and we'll keep an eye out on this development. Vuyo Mhaga from the Premier's office, the spokesperson for the Premier there, talking about how we are going to get ourselves into a healthier position, both with our assets and our finances in the Gauteng province.